Hello, I'm civil rights attorney Carol Powell Lexing, and welcome to the Carol Powell Lexing Show. My mission is to enlighten you and empower you with knowledge from my 30-year plus legal experience in the community that will connect you to pertinent issues affecting you, your community, and the country. Before I get started, I always like to do a little affirmation quote, or a little affirmation of self-help. But today I am going to just give a quote. This quote says that when men are oppressed, it's a tragedy. When women are oppressed, it's a tradition. Now that kind of fits right into our topic of discussion that we're going to be diving into today, because we are going to be talking about one of the most controversial rulings in the 21st century. And here to help me facilitate that discussion is attorney Holli Holiday, the president of Sisters Lead Sisters. Welcome, Holli, and tell us something about yourself and about your organization.
Well, I am pleased to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm the president of Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. We started in 2018, really with the recognition that we needed to have more Black women's leadership, that Black women's leadership was, in fact, in our opinion, the key to addressing some of the critical issues in the Black community, and that if we entered a space and we did not see Black women's leadership in that space, that was a space that we needed to walk out of and bring some Black women in to be a part of the decision-making process. And we look at that with the political lens. And so our goal is to always to amplify the political voices of Black women wherever they may sit.
Well, I tell you, our voices will be heard. We will never be silenced.
Yes, we cannot be stopped.
Never. Having said that, Holli, women's rights are under attack.
Ooh, boy.
And we see that in the most recent ruling, like I said, the most controversial ruling in the 21st century with the reversal or overturning of Roe versus Wade. Can you tell us how did we get to this point?
Well, listen, we know that unfortunately, history is not on our side in terms of women's rights and the intersection of women's rights and Black women in particular, our rights. And so we've been fighting really since this country's inception as women, as Black women, to receive the full rights of other citizens, and particularly white male citizens. And with the original Roe versus Wade decision, finally, we were made whole. But for the first time in 50 years, this court in the Dobbs decision made a choice to take away a right. You know, actually, it is true that in this country, we've only ever added to our rights. And this is a landmark in many ways. It is a landmark, not only because it is rolling back women's rights, but it is a landmark because it actually represents the first time in our history that we have decided to take a right away that we've previously granted.
I know, and it's just it just leaves all of us speechless, because it's going to lead to taking other rights away. But before we get into that, this Dobbs case, it's called Dobbs versus Jackson Health Center, I believe, down in Jackson, Mississippi. Yep. Where you had one of the health workers who worked for the state of Jackson, I'll just say Mississippi, that worked for the state of Mississippi, decide he was going to challenge this abortion clinic down in Jackson, Mississippi. And with this new, I guess, judicial activism court that we have, they felt hook, line, and sinker, because the argument that was facilitated, or that what they argued about, was that this statute that Mississippi had abandoning abortions did not provide any rights for women to have an abortion. And if you had an abortion, it would be, this center by the mere fact that they were allowing abortions, or it was an abortion clinic, that they were operating illegally. Well, they took this case all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, which I now call the judicial activism type of court that we have. And they felt hook, line, and sinker to say, okay, you don't have a right. Women don't have any right of privacy over their own bodies anymore. You have to pretty much allow the government to dictate how you, I guess, how you operate your reproductive rights or facilitate your rights. So So
I mean, the impact of it is well, you know, as an attorney, there are two parts that are particularly troubling. The first part of it that is troubling is their rationale on how they got to their decision.
Right.
Which is based on a legal construct of originalism, which is really just a construct that says that we look at the original intent of the founders to make a decision as to whether or not it is something that is guaranteed under the Constitution today. Well, first and foremost, I reject originalism because let's be honest, they had no idea. There are so many things that the founders could never have imagined.
Right.
And just like our language has evolved, just like technology has evolved, there is nothing that touches our lives that has not evolved even over the last 5 years, much less the last 200 years. So to suggest that we should take 1800 thinking and apply it to 21st century reality is just absolutely ridiculous. Furthermore, if we then extend that logic to other things, literally the things that they were protecting during the time of the original Constitution, I think would be beyond the pale now. Let's not forget, women were not even allowed to vote in the original construction of the Constitution. Right. We were slaves during the original construction of the Constitution.
Right.
You know, and in fact, even people who were not of an elite social and economic status, you know, because there were things that were specifically granted to landowners would see rollback. So, I mean, the idea that we want to apply this even theory of law in this way is ridiculous. The second thing is, this country has a long history, and again, for Black people, it's particularly tenable because one of the key places where we've seen this in history is this idea of states' rights. Well, the idea of states' rights is really closely tied, again, to a dark past in our history, which is slavery. You know, we attempted to look at the idea of rights, and let's understand that when we talk about states' rights, we're talking about things that are inextricably linked to our human experience.
Right.
So we're talking about literally those things that are about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to suggest that you can have a different set of rights and freedoms in one state than you have in another state. We tried this already when we looked at the Missouri Compromise. It didn't work for us then when it dealt with slavery. It's not going to work for us now when we deal with women's rights.
Right. And for whatever reason, we got a Supreme Court, a United States Supreme Court, that says that it's going to work, which means that you would have to roll back, interracial marriages, same-sex marriages, even contraceptions, where they're going to say you're not entitled to birth control or any type of control. I think what has happened here is that the government has placed a burden on the back of women as it relates to their reproductive rights. And because of this burden, you got all these different states. We're going to go back to what you said. If we had to depend on the states, we would still be in slavery. Because the states, and you know, some states in the southern states, I'm from Louisiana, and that would be one of them, would definitely not allow, certain things to take place. But we see that because we have each state with all these different laws banning abortion. I'm going to go back to Louisiana. They had a trigger ban, and the trigger ban were the law. They always had a ban on the abortions, and they never any exceptions to the rule. So when Roe versus Wade got turned back, that particular law went into effect at that particular time. And it has just caused a whole bunch of confusion throughout the land when you have different states. How are we the United States of America when each state is trying to do its own thing, and as it relates to trying to control the reproductive rights of women? So,
yes,
I don't think it's going to work.
It's not going to work. And let us also note here that we have states that have taken this to the nth degree, even further than what we imagined under this concept of originalism, because they've now not only taken the right away, we have some states that have criminalized seeking medical care, that will literally fine and in some cases jail medical providers and women for seeking the procedure. So, I mean, this is beyond just rolling back rights. They are trying to really damage the way in which women are able to make their own health care choices. And let's be clear. This is about abortion today, but recognize that abortion is a medical procedure.
Right.
And that what we're really talking about is the right, and I would even argue the freedom of women to be able to make their own health decisions. This is not just about making a choice. This is who gets to decide who is in control of your own body.
Right. It's a healthcare decision that should be between the woman and her physician or her healthcare provider. And having said that, I don't know if you're familiar with, I represent a stay-at-home mom by the name of Nancy Davis, who found out when she was 13 weeks pregnant that her child was going to be born without a skull. Well, in the state of Louisiana, of course, they have criminalized abortions to the point where doctors were afraid to give her an abortion. And in her own words, she says she had to basically carry her baby to bury her baby. But you see those type of situations going on in different states because Miss Davis couldn't get anyone in Louisiana to perform her abortion because the laws are so vague and ambiguous and really unconstitutional if you really get down to the nitty gritty of the situation.
Yeah.
Because they have criminalized. In fact, a doctor could get 15, in her particular case, she was already 13 weeks pregnant. So they have criminalized it that if you perform an abortion after 15 weeks, you're going to get 25 or 20 or 15 years, up to 15 years in prison and a fine up to $200,000.
Yeah.
But if you just perform a general abortion during that particular time period before the 15 weeks expire, you're only going to get 10 years and be fined up to $100,000. Well, who's going to put their whole life in jeopardy based upon some unprofound or some unconstitutional law that you have hindered the rights of women to be able to make these healthcare decisions for themselves? This was a healthcare decision. Miss Davis would have to keep this child in her if she had stayed in Louisiana for 9 months, which could have set up other healthcare problems with her. And we find that for whatever reason, the powers that be, our activism court does not see and did not see how this is a healthcare decisions that should have been left to the women, because no one wants to put their lives in jeopardy. It could set up all types of infections. It could cause all types of health problems. And not to mention the mental stress, the anxiety, and all of those things that are related to the bans on abortion. Yeah.
Sadly, many people see the face of women who get abortion as being frivolous and utilizing this medical procedure as a substitute for birth control. When the reality is most women who have abortions are already parents. They are fully aware of what it involves to have a child, to care for a child, to manage pregnancies, and they should be trusted. And I would say this, yes, I am an attorney and we've talked a lot about the legal stuff, but I really lean in both to my organizing background and my advocacy background. So, to the women who may be having to face this choice, I want to encourage you to visit abortionfunds.org. This is a website that will allow you to figure out where you can seek reproductive health care, including an abortion. It also has resources that may offer some financial support as well as support for your mental, physical, and just overall general well-being as you go through this difficult and just stressful time period for you and your families. And then I want to say politically, this November, we've already seen that the people are being asked to weigh in on this. And so if you happen to live in Michigan or Kentucky, literally whether or not your state is going to go the way of Louisiana or the way of Kansas is on the ballot. And I trust that voters will go and let their voices be heard. Our research and polling shows us that 8 in 10 Americans, and that's male and female Americans, really support a woman's right to decide and make her own medical choices. And I think that we have to use our power, we have to use our power to talk about it. It's going to come up everywhere. It's going to come up in our state legislators. It's going to come up at the ballot. It's going to come up in the Congress. We have to be vigilant and ready to let our lawmakers know that we care about this subject and that we expect them to represent the majority of us who want to see the full range of medical services provided for.
Right. I tell you what I like about the state of California. They have what they call Prop 1 out there. And what they have on the ballot is a law that's going to, in what the governor says, shrine into their constitution the rights for women to make their own reproductive decisions.
That's right.
Decisions.
And we just saw that law pass in Kansas as well, so on their ballot. And so, unfortunately, this might be the way in which women can stand up to protect themselves. I hate that we are at this point because honestly, this is why we have a federal government. Our federal government and our Supreme Court should be in the business of protecting our rights and freedoms. But as you have said, they've really gone to war against our rights and freedoms, and now they are activated to act against our interest. And those being lifetime appointments, we have to use the other segments of government to push back. Thank goodness we have more than one segment of government. Right. So we do have some options, but I hate that we have ended up here.
Right. Why do you think is so much control of trying to make women not be in control or make their own health care decisions by placing all these bans on abortion? Do you think that's tied to immigration?
I don't think listen, I'm going to say it like this. I'm going to flip it a little bit and say, I think it's tied to white supremacy.
Well, we're going to get to
and
that.
I'm going to say it to you like this because, and the reason that I don't say it's tied specifically to immigration is because what we do understand, again, about the history of this country and white people in this country is that when their numbers don't meet what they wanted to meet, they annex new people into their whiteness. And so we have seen a history of immigrants over the course of this country that came to this country as non-white, if you will, and got annexed in. This This was true for the Irish community. It was true for the Polish community. It was true for the Italian community. It was true for the Jewish community. And now we see that it is becoming true for parts of the Hispanic community or the Latina community. But these are just ploys to divide us from the folks who we need to be united with. We have to be smarter than that. It's not about, it is fundamentally about power. It is fundamentally about keeping an elite class of people in control and in power over everything that happens. And as we become closer and closer to a minority majority country, and as people of color, Black people, Latinos, Asians, and others, and including immigrants, find unity and power, they seek to divide it. And we have to be smarter than that. And luckily, we have more than 400 years of history of resistance we can pull on.
Right.
I was having a call this morning with a good friend of mine, and we were talking about voting, and she said, all the things that we've gone through and they haven't stopped us yet, and that's the spirit that I think that's the spirit and the history and the power that I think we all need to pull on as Black people, but frankly, as people of color and anybody who feels marginalized.
Right. I tell you, you hit it right on the head. when you talked about white supremacy, that's where I was going. I didn't quite get there, but
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to preempt you.
No,
listen,
but
at Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, one of the things that we were founded on was this idea that we have to attack racism and sexism on its head.
Definitely.
That it can no longer be the thing that we whisper about in the darkness or that we talk about in the hallway, because we don't have the tools to address it when we're in the spaces. This is why we need Black women's leadership, because we need people who are strong and who have been through this and who are unafraid and unapologetic to be exactly who they are, right, and to proclaim when they see these things happening. Because if we can stop it at the genesis, we don't have to get to this point that we're at now.
Right. I tell you.
You done hit something I'm passionate about, so, I'm going to start rambling.
I'm very passionate about it, too, because, like you said, we were doing fine for 50 years, and then all of a sudden someone woke up and said, oh, my God, we might be the minority. Let's put a ban on abortion here. All these women now want to be professional women, and our population is decreasing, and you're bringing all these other people over here, and we're going to lose our power. So,
yeah, and the reality is that, we were seeing a sharp decline in the number of women who were selecting abortion as a medical as something as part of their medical care. And the reason, quite honestly, is there's a direct correlation between the number of women who might seek an abortion and our ability to have the resources and opportunities to build for our families.
Right.
So when our economy is strong, when our healthcare is strong, with the passage of the CHIPS program, with the Children's Health Insurance Program, right, with the passage of the American with ACA, the American Health Care Act, with the passage of protections for child care. These are things, Head Start. These are all programs that help make it possible for women to really see their babies. It's not enough just to have the baby.
Right.
People, and especially women, we're practical creatures, okay?
Right.
We're thinking about what happens next all the time. We're always thinking about what is the next thing? What is the future for my children? What's the future for my family? And the more we have the resources to be able to wrap our arms around what that is, then we make different choices.
Right. Well, I tell you, this is very interesting. I know the conversation is going to continue, because as long as these laws are out there, I think we should go back and still try to re-challenge some of these laws. In fact,
I agree.
We just can't sit back and say, well, the court has already made the ruling. You just never know what mindset that's what the judicial activism court may be in at a particular time.
That's right.
So
and we have new
like
people on the court. Thank you, Justice Jackson, who has joined the court.
Yes.
And even in her first couple week, almost 2 weeks now, of being on the bench, she's come out like a firecracker.
That's what we need.
She literally has said and contributed more to the discussion and challenged the ideas that people have as they come in to speak to the Supreme Court than Clarence Thomas has in the 20 years he's been on the bench in just 2 weeks.
Who?
So there you go.
Who?
That makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Well, that's that strong black woman power.
That's right. That's right.
That's that strong black woman's power out there. And she has brought a freshness or a totally different vibe to the United States Supreme Court. And hopefully they will take note of it, and you know that she'll start influencing them to make the right move.
I think it's a certainty.
Yeah.
I mean, she's already to your point, she's already challenged them.
Yeah.
She's already challenged their thinking. Mm-hmm. She's already challenged their assumptions. She brings that lived experience in a way that no one else can. Having been a defense attorney, having been a person who's dealt with serious issues like immigration, having been a person who's lived a life as a black woman with black children and black families. So she's challenging even the way that they think about who we are and how we show up. And that's the exact kind of representation that we need. We needed it on the Supreme Court. And let's be honest, we need it in our lawmakers. We need that from our lawmakers across this country. We need it in our boardrooms across this country. And that's what we're all about.
Right. And that's why it's very important that people go out and vote. So you can put
the
right people in the right places at the right time that's going to have a heart for the people.
That's right.
And so I'm excited, Holly. I'm so glad you came.
I'm so glad you had me. This has been great.
Yeah, because this is a never-ending saga as it relates to women reproductive rights and women rights in general. So
that's right.
I guess I'm going to say thank you for joining us today, and make sure to check out my website at carolpowellexinglaw.com. And until we meet again.
Until we meet again.
Yes.